How was your week otherwise? All good?
Oh yeah, everything's humming along nicely. The book is selling well, apparently.
Nice. Congratulations.
That's awesome.
So this is good for us. It's our fourth meeting with you in 3 months, in 30 days,
Yeah.
3 weeks probably.
I know. We're lucky people.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, here goes.
All right.
Dr. Doug Cardell's career includes roles as an aide to a member of Congress, a corporate CEO, an award-winning educator, a consultant to the Arizona Department of Education, and a professor of mathematics. His expertise is economics, economic policy, mathematical modeling, and system dynamics modeling. He holds multiple advanced degrees and certificates from the University of Arizona, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, of course, and the University of Phoenix, as well as a PhD in economic policy from Liberty University. That is so impressive. His success in the real world as an educator makes him uniquely qualified to evaluate economic systems. His book, Why Socialism Struggles, is available on Amazon and has become a bestseller instantly. We're excited for this conversation, Doug. Thank you and welcome.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm really excited for it too.
Awesome. So let's jump in, but let's start with the basics. So I have a two-part question for you. Part one, since we are talking about socialism, what is socialism? Part one. Part two, how is it different from capitalism, fascism, communism, and any other ism you want to add?
Well, socialism is an economic system where the government owns the means of production and all property. It's a little different from fascism, in which the government controls the means of production and property.
Oh,
It's clearly different from capitalism, where the people own property and the means of production. And communism is an economic system that does not and probably never will exist. We talk
okay.
about it a lot, but Marx envisioned communism as socialism becoming so successful that the government would wither away, like that's ever going to happen.
Hmm.
Can you give us examples of each with a country? Like so and so
Sure.
country follows this.
Socialism, a good example would be North Korea.
Okay.
Fascism right now, probably, I mean, obviously Hitler's Germany, but China is pretty much fascist right now. They don't own much of the stuff outright, but they control virtually all of it.
Okay.
Capitalism, there has never been a truly capitalist country. I mean, the closest ones right now are probably Singapore, Ireland, are about as close as it gets. Because government tends to interfere and make countries less capitalist because they feel like they need to do things.
I see. So you wouldn't put US as a capitalist country.
Not purely. I mean, it certainly
Oh,
is leaning. It leans that way. I think, according to Heritage, they do a survey every year. I think the U.S. is now like the 20th most free
wow.
economy in the world.
Interesting.
People talk a lot about democratic socialism, and again, no such thing. Democracy and socialism are incompatible. The
Yeah.
only Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that actually is my next question, because democratic socialism is a big thing right now that people are talking about. So wanting to kind of see the difference between democratic socialism and socialism.
Yeah, the the examples people. Okay, according to the Democratic Socialists of America, democratic socialism is just a waypoint on the way to true socialism. But the countries they always reference are countries like Norway, Sweden, the Nordic countries, and so on.
Right.
And And they are very firm in denying that they are socialist. They are capitalist countries, as capitalist as you. In fact, most of them are right now listed by Heritage as more capitalist than the US. But they have a larger social safety net. And what they call themselves is social democracies, which is probably where the confusion comes from.
So I want to bring it down to kind of a personal level.
Sure.
I work with a lot of young adults, and they, are doing all the things they've been told to do, right? Go get an education, work hard, be responsible. And they feel like they're really struggling with meeting some of the milestones of adulthood. Housing feels out of reach. The wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. Many have student loan burden, and they have this feeling that capitalism isn't working for their generation. And I'm curious what message you would provide to them.
First of all, their problem isn't with capitalism, it's with government. For the 4 years of the Biden administration, we had the highest inflation in the history of the US. Well, yeah, that's what drove prices up for sure. But it was because the government intervened in the economy. They did a bunch of stuff. I mean, we probably don't want to take the time to go into all the stuff they did, but they did a bunch of stuff that caused a huge amount of inflation. Virtually anything you can think of that is a criticism of capitalism is actually a problem caused by government. The government, that's why I say it's not a completely capitalist country, because the government tends to get out of its lane, is the way I would put it. The government needs to be in charge of managing the economy to the extent that bad people aren't allowed to mess with it. But too often they end up messing with it themselves. And it's an economy, it's a system that works only when you let it work. And so I think, as far as what to tell young people to do, well, the first thing I would say is to find out what your talents are, find out what your bliss is, and say, how can I do these? How can I find something to do that I love doing, that I'm talented at doing, and then how can I use that to create value for other people? Because the crucial part of success in anything really comes down to creating value.
Right.
First of all, it makes you a whole lot happier. I mean, despite having a rough day, I've been excited all day to be here with you, because rather than fixing household problems, I would get a chance to actually create value for others. And I'm betting that that's why you're here too.
Oh, we love what we do.
Yeah.
Just love it.
And
I'm sorry, but what you said really resonated with me. I love it. I've said it in different words throughout my career as a coach. Find your passion, dive into it, figure out how to monetize it, and there's no ceiling to what you can reach. But you used a beautiful word here. The word was value. Can you, I believe that word is pregnant with meaning. So can you unpack that for us? What did you mean by value?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's critical to acknowledge that value is in the mind of the consumer. Nothing has absolute value. It doesn't. Gold does not have absolute value. And that's easy to demonstrate. I mean, I saw an article not too long ago that said Psyche had enough gold and other materials to make everybody on Earth a billionaire. And that's just utter nonsense. I mean, imagine what would happen if Psyche got close enough to us to break up in the atmosphere and rain down 3 inches of gold around the planet. Now, would everybody be a billionaire? No. Almost instantly, gold would have negative value.
Yeah.
Negative? How's that possible? Well, I know what I would do. I'd be paying people to shovel it up and get it out of my backyard.
Yeah.
And that's what we mean by negative value is you pay people to get rid of it. You don't pay people to get it. Now that gold will still have value. I mean, it's a good conductor of electricity and stuff like that. But we would have so much of it that it would be selling for $5 a pound or something instead of $5,000 an ounce.
Wow.
Wow. That's amazing. So you have this huge storehouse reservoir of knowledge that you just dip into, a lot of real world experience. What triggered you to write this book now?
Well, it's been building for a long, long time. My first experience with socialism, it was called communism, but was probably when I was about 12. I remember somebody trying to convince me that communism was the best thing since sliced bread, and we should immediately try doing that. And I listened to her argument, and I said, well, that won't work. And she said, well, why not? I said, well, it assumes that people will put their self-interest aside for the self-interest of a group. And that's only going to work if people are saints, and they aren't. And it isn't just a matter of sainthood. Every living organism has to pursue its self-interest, or it will die. It's that simple. I mean, lack of pursuing self-interest is death. Now, that doesn't mean we can't cooperate with other people, because many times cooperating with other people, like you and I are doing right now, is in our self-interest.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't mean we should be mean to others or anything like that. That's greed or selfishness. That's not the same as self-interest.
Yeah, you're so right. There is this implied meaning nowadays that if you have self-interest, you must be a selfish person who takes away from others. Or let me take that a step further. All rich people are evil, and they are there only because of greed. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that for us.
Sure. To explain it right, it's kind of a long story, but um, we can try and discuss it as we go. The world has changed dramatically, and the sad part is most people don't understand that. If you look at gross domestic product, GDP, per capita, over long, gigantic periods of time, let's say we go back to the year 1 and then to the year 1500, per capita GDP didn't change a drop. That means there was the same amount of stuff in the world for 1500 years per person, same amount of stuff. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means if you want to get more, you have to take it from somebody else because there's only X amount of stuff. And so that's like where Robin Hood came from. Back then, there was no doubt about it. The rich had to be the bad guys because they literally got rich by taking stuff from other people. But the world is different now.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I'm curious if this is actually a phrase, but kind of a moral ceiling to how much one person can make or have.
You're so smart.
I don't see how. A phrase I use a lot is I pirated from the Beatles, and it says, and in the end, the value you take is equal to the value you make. And if someone gets rich by creating value for others, I don't, how would it matter how much? I mean, right now I'm talking to you on Starlink. Elon Musk created that for me. And so my life is a whole lot better. I mean, I live out in the sticks, and any kind of communication used to be a nightmare until Elon Musk bailed me out. So he's made my life a whole lot better. Why would I begrudge him getting paid for that?
Right.
It doesn't make sense. But I think most people are still stuck in that 1500 mindset. There's they still think that the only reason you get rich is by taking from other people. And I
Wow.
don't see any evidence at all that Elon Musk is functioning out of greed. Uh,
Yeah.
the stuff he does are things that help the whole world. And sure, he's making a lot of money out of it, but he seems to me to be the kind, the kind of person that has fun. He's creating value and having fun doing it. He found his niche. He found something he's talented at. He found something he loves doing, and he's doing it to the max.
He
And
revolutionizes everything he touches.
yeah, and it turns out if you look at the top 10 richest people in the world who right now happen to be Americans, um, they're all in the same boat, basically. I mean, it's hard to find a reason to say any of them are doing something bad.
Yeah.
What about the people who do extract and make all of their money not from creating value, but from taking from others? Because that is also a thing that happens, certainly.
It sure is. You're right. I'm sure there are hedge fund managers out there that are doing stuff like that has
Yeah.
no value to the economy, isn't helping. But that's, again, we're talking about a failure of government.
Mhm.
I mean, in any line you want to think of, if people have the freedom to do it, they will exploit it. There are podcast hosts and podcast guests and economists and doctors and lawyers and priests that do bad stuff.
True.
And it's government's job to stop that from happening. And so in my book, I present a thing called the flip tax, which I think would help that a lot. It's basically a tax that is on sort of a sliding scale that says if the faster you turn over an asset, the higher the tax on the profits from that asset.
Hmm.
And so if you turn over the profit, say in a day, you're going to get like a 99.9% tax on the profit you made.
Right.
If you keep the asset for, say, 30 years, like your house, it's basically tax-free.
True.
And so what it does is a tax like that would help people that are truly investing, but penalize people who are just trying to make money.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what would, for example, the US, what would need to change within the government system to actually reflect a truly capitalist country?
Another
Well,
fabulous question.
yeah, I mean, that's going to be a tough one. It may require changing the Constitution and put limits on what government can do in messing with the economy. The bottom line is they have to serve as guardrails that keep the bad actors out, but then suppress their own tendency to want to meddle. Because a good example, the economy is a chaotic system that functions by what's called spontaneous order. So is your body. It's a chaotic system that functions by spontaneous order.
Hmm.
And those kinds of systems exist whenever there's a huge amount of actors that all interact and do stuff with each other. So right now there's a cell in your kidney somewhere that is humming along doing this little cell thing. It's following its own self-interest. It's trying to breed, grow, multiply, do all its stuff. It doesn't even know you exist. But now let's pretend for a minute it did know you exist and you were really in charge, like the government. Think of how hard it would be, the time it would take for your conscious mind to actually manage all of the cells in your body, trillions and trillions of them. If you could send one command a second, it would take 100,000 years to tell every cell what to do.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking about an impossible task, but that's what the government tries to do.
That is such a powerful
analogy. It is. Yep.
Love it.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, using that same analogy, sometimes cells go beyond self-interest and get greedy. We call that cancer.
Hmm.
And that's when the government, your conscious mind, has to intervene and go, we have to kill this We have to stop this right now. We have to do whatever it takes. We have to get chemo or radiation or surgery and stop this greedy thing from messing up my body.
Mm.
And so that's really, I think, a really good example of what government's role should and should not be. It should be
Wow.
looking for trouble and fixing it, not trying to tinker with how it works.
Yeah.
Yes. Love it. Love it. Love it. Speaking of chaotic systems and forming the larger picture, there's this term, the butterfly effect, wherein a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil and there's a typhoon somewhere else as a result. So
Mm-hmm.
does that even apply to economics? And if yes, then how?
It does indeed. The weather. In fact, the quote you mentioned is from a guy named Lorenz in
Hmm.
'72, and he was working on weather models and found out that tiny inputs could make huge changes in the outputs. And so, including something like a butterfly flapping its wings, it could be an input that tiny, and the output could be as big as a typhoon. And in chaotic systems, they're unpredictable. He was able to prove very conclusively that you'd never get the weather close more than a couple of weeks out. And I would challenge our listeners to get on their favorite weather app, look 2 weeks out, see what it says is going to happen, and then see if it was right. And you're going to find out it's pretty marginal. It was supposed to be 80 here today. Let me check my thermometer. The high was 74. Okay, so now for many things that's close enough. But if you're planning a huge 1,000-person barbecue, 3 months from now, you better have a really good backup plan.
Yeah.
Because the chances of it raining on that barbecue are not small. I mean, just the fact that the weather report says it's not going to happen doesn't mean it won't.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, more than 2 weeks out, the weather or the economy is just guesswork. I've done a lot of research on it, and I can explain that if you think it would help.
Yeah, because in my head, I was thinking maybe you should be able to project, because if you know what season's coming, you have data of all the appliances sold in the past 10 years, you know how much is being manufactured, you know what cultural events are coming. Maybe it is possible to predict. I mean,
Well,
please correct me.
yeah, no, I did research. I did a 30-year study on the personal consumption expenditures. And that's a really good measure of what's going to happen next, as good a measure as there is. And I looked at the Federal Reserve's predictions, and then I looked a year later and saw what happened. They were right 46% of the time. You literally
Wow,
could have
that's
bet
8.
there
That's
a coin.
46.
46%, yeah.
Crazy.
But there's a good reason for that. You know, all of our listeners, you guys, me, I've got plans for the next year. I'll bet you do too. I'll
Oh
bet
yeah.
all the listeners do. Now, do I know what those plans are? If I'm the economist planning the economy, what do I do? I don't know
Yeah.
who's planning to buy a car, who's planning to get a new cell phone, because that's what makes it a chaotic system, is that there are millions, in our case, 9 billion actors, all of which who have those kinds of plans. And the only way you can do anything is if you could control all of that or predict all of that. But it's clearly impossible. I can't read 9 billion minds. I can't even read one. I don't know what my wife is planning next week.
I try every day.
We all do. And
he'll never know. He will never know.
and yeah, so yeah, it's a hopeless task.
Yeah.
And
do you think
not
AI?
it's not because
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking, do you think AI will have any impact on that and being better able to predict in the future, or is it this kind of model? It's
Well,
just unpredictable.
unless they can somehow teach AI to read 9 billion minds, I don't see how.
It's That's a very good point.
because that's really
I
the
don't know, it could be
problem.
close.
I mean, that's really the problem is that in capitalism, the consumers are the economy. They run everything. And so in a true capitalist economy, the consumers are the boss. And the only way to predict what's going to happen even 2 weeks from now is to have some sense of what's going to happen. Now, 2 weeks now, you can maybe make reasonable guesses. You can look at trends and stuff like that and maybe get some ideas.
Yeah.
3 months out, it starts to get really, really dicey. I certainly wouldn't try to do that because it's at that point, I'm guessing. And a year out, hopeless. Now, when the Soviet Union was functioning, they tried to do it 5 years out, and that's part of why their economy tanked. I mean, 5 years out is silliness. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in a socialist country then, or socialist government, they are dictating what you can have, basically. So they're saying this is the supply, this is what you will get. That's the difference. Okay. Makes sense.
But in all of those countries, most of the socialist or fascist countries, there's usually almost always a thriving black market. And in some of them, like in North Korea, if you do stuff on the black market, there's a death penalty.
Yeah.
They don't fool around. But people do it anyway. I mean, they will risk their lives to get a pair of Western jeans.
That's wow. Yeah, that says a lot. It says a lot. Just continuing what she said about AI, I've seen Elon often talk about universal income once AI really kicks in, and most of us won't have any work to do, blah, blah, blah. If that does come true, then in my head, now again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but in my head, I'm thinking that if everyone has this universal basic income or needs are taken care of, doesn't that automatically push us towards being a socialistic environment? So is AI pushing us inevitably towards socialism?
Well, I hate to contradict Elon, but I don't think it's going to go that way. One of my mentors was the inventor of system dynamics, Professor Jay Forrester at MIT. And I spent a year in an intensive program with him. And one of his models was made sort of famous in I'm blanking on the name of the book now. Donella Meadows' book. Well, I'll think of it in a minute. No, Limits to Growth. And his and he initially had that same idea that eventually limits to growth would force things into a situation that was untenable, that in that sense that AI might be able to fix. But I argued, and I think I eventually convinced him that that's going to mean a change in the economy, definitely, but it's not going to put people out of work. Why not? Well, what are you and I doing right now? Is AI going to take our jobs? I think it's very unlikely that I would be happy about sitting through an interview with a robot.
Yeah. True. That's true.
And I've got doubts about whether AI is going to be able to write best-selling books. Those things require an understanding of people that it's hard for me to imagine how AI could ever get that. I mean, I'm often surprised at the number of people that don't get that.
Yeah.
Let alone AI.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about my other career in music. Same thing. Can AI make music? Yes. Can it make music that touches people's souls? I don't think so. Because I think you have to have a soul to touch one.
Yeah.
And so
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I think it's going to mean changes. On the other hand, I think it's going to be a long time before AI gets all that smart.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but I noticed it. I just happened to order a vacuum cleaner because that was another thing that went bad today uh, on Amazon. And 5 minutes later, it came up and said, "You ordered a vacuum cleaner. Would you like another one?"
Oh,
Okay. That's their little bot. I mean, and that's crazy. I mean, I get that all the time from Amazon. You order something that is supposed to last 5 years, and it says, "Are you ready to replace it yet?" Well, no.
yeah. I
It's,
agree with you. Totally agree with you. In fact, just to add to what you're saying, in 2012, I wrote a book called Pride of Lions. And the book was a war story. And when I wrote it, this is before I published it, I shared the book with a few friends of mine who were also authors or had some experience writing. Now, the core of the book was a hardcore war story, a military operation. And I'm ex army, I'm ex infantry, so I've seen a little bit here and there. And the main core of the story is enveloped in the front, the beginning and the end, with another fictional story around it. And towards the end, it takes off on a tangent and adds some supernatural elements into it. So my friends who read the book, they said, when the action, the everything that you've written of the war story is so powerful, it hits you in the gut. And anyone reading knows that this is stuff you've seen yourself. You don't need the other crap around it. You just don't. It's so unnecessary to suddenly let go of this kind of gritty action and take off on a tangent which has no connect whatsoever. So I took their opinions and finally decided to just stick to my guns and release the book as it was. The book did very well, and it was a bestseller through 2013. And then I got approached by this movie studio that they wanted to make a movie out of it. So they signed me up, and I got paid pretty well. And then they wanted me to be a consultant on turning the novel into a script. So I was sitting with the script writers and I asked them, I said, there's so many war stories, there's so many veterans who are writing. Why did you want my book? And they said, we wanted your book because of the ending and the supernatural element added to it, because it is so whacked out that it's brilliant. And I was like, ooh, I don't think AI can do that right now. It hasn't reached there yet. So I agree with you 100%. Thank you. Thank you. I have another question for you. So when you look at countries have populations, demographics, or culture playing a huge role. Now, the culture in a country like Afghanistan is diametrically opposite from the culture we have here in the US or in Canada or in UK, right? So when you talk about capitalism, is it possible to apply capitalism across cultures, or will there be resistance? Because some countries are just better off under dictatorships or very, very strict supervision. Euthanasia as an example. Mercy, what's it called? MAID, right?
Well,
Euthanasia.
there's death with dignity, or
Yes.
something. Yeah.
So now if you talk about death with dignity or euthanasia on this side of the world, it makes sense. But if you talk about that in another part of the world, which is poverty stricken or follows another culture, it may not work because it could be exploited by people to kill off their older family members to inherit their money. So I want to know what your thoughts are on applying capitalism across cultures.
Well, I think capitalism it's the natural state. It's the state that would exist if government didn't. I mean, the very earliest economies were basically capitalist. People made stuff, they sold it, they traded it.
That's true.
But what didn't happen much was a huge amount of progress because they hadn't invented the part about investing for the future. And that's a key part of capitalism, is being able to invest for the future. Um, uh, I think that some cultures would adapt certainly more quickly than others. Um, there's a fair amount of literature on wheat culture versus rice culture, and wheat culture, which is tends to lead toward capitalism, exists when people work best in relative isolation. So in other words, I can go out today and plant wheat in my yard and everything will be cool. Um, but rice culture exists in places where it takes a huge community to do it,
Oh,
because you have to do these massive earthworks and flood fields, and it takes thousands of people to harvest it and all that. It's very, very hard to do it with machines. And so countries like that have a harder time adapting to capitalism because they're used to a group think sort of a way of doing things. Um, and it would take some adjustment for sure. Uh, but like I say, capitalism really is the natural way. It's the way squirrels function. I mean, if squirrels can get it, I don't know why people can't. I mean, they save nuts for the future. We think about them, the benefit to the environment of them planting trees and so on, but that's squirrels are operating out of self-interest. They're not going, gotta plant trees, got running around trying to figure out how to plant trees. They're just going, I gotta save food for the winter because it's going to get cold now. I'll starve to death if I don't do this. And so yeah, if squirrels or bees, same basic idea.
yeah.
If squirrels and bees can get it, I think people can.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That was pretty powerful. You just answered a question that was in my head for a while. One more question, sensitive topic, DEI. What would you see as the role of DEI in capitalism? Because some say DEI will kill merit, and some say DEI will help give a platform to those who don't have access and would in fact encourage merit. So where do you stand on that?
Well, as with a lot of social programs, my concern is in the implementation. Um, Lots and lots of social programs have well-meaning ideas, but the problem is they tend to do things wholesale, one size fits all. And so if and I don't know how they could improve that. In other words, if you take a person of category X and say, now this person should get an advantage because people in category X have had a disadvantage, how do we know that that particular person in category X experienced any disadvantage? Because very clearly, there are plenty of people in any category you want to pick who have not experienced those disadvantages. I mean, there
Yeah.
are, we can pick wildly successful people from any one of those categories. And so, um, if if there were some way we could find to actually help people that need help, I'm certainly not opposed to that. But I just don't see much of a role for government in that. Now, I think back when charitable groups, religious groups, so on, were the ones doing that, it tended to work better because everybody knew everybody. The people making the decisions about who to help knew the people they were helping.
Yeah.
And that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, if I see somebody that needs help, I'm happy to try and help them, um, because I really want to help in a way that helps. And promoting somebody that doesn't have the appropriate skills to do a job isn't going to help them. It's going to put them in a position where ultimately they're going to fail, and they're going to end up feeling bad about themselves. They're going to hate their job while they're doing it, probably because they got put in a situation that is beyond them. And
Right.
so meritocracy just means that you're prepared for the next step. And you can't just magically prepare somebody for that next step and say, because I say so, you're suddenly qualified to do a job.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I guess there's a balance to be struck, because if you don't standardize, then in large populations, you can have nepotism, corruption, all these things happening. At the same time, if you do standardize, like you said, one size doesn't fit all. So there must be some balance. I get your
Yeah.
point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I wanted to get into kind of the social programs and those safety nets. So one, how did that look? So for instance, when you were talking about it was done kind of in churches and local communities, how was that sustained in those spaces? Like who funded it? How did they promote that, or kind of keep that going? Actually, we'll just start with that.
well, I live in a rural community and we help each other. I mean, we do that all the time. Um, there are times when somebody in the community will maybe make a GoFundMe account about something that the rest of the community recognizes as something that really isn't appropriate, that their situation doesn't warrant it. And so, things may not work out real well in that circumstance. But um, I, from what I've read about in history, I mean, it seemed to have worked pretty well. And it's just based on the idea that you have a smaller community that can make those kinds of decisions. I mean, too many times in society, in the U.S. at least, the way it is now, the the safety net becomes a hammock.
Yeah.
And and who are we helping by that? I mean, safety nets came from high wire acts, and the idea was you would fall off the high wire, you'd hit the net, you'd roll out of it, and climb back up on the high wire. You didn't just stay in the net for the rest of the circus. Well,
Lovely.
I mean, I love helping people, but I'm very careful to want to make sure that I'm really helping. I used to commute a long commute every day and see a lot of people with signs on the street, hungry help. And so what I would do is I would buy a case of beans at Costco, and I would hand them a can of beans.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help somebody that needs to eat,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to give him $5 because I don't know where that's going to go. It may go into his arm, or it may go into alcohol, or it may go into a bunch of candy.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do anything to help somebody, I want to be able to know that I'm really helping. And I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about there's a couple organizations I've supported over the years, and one was I mean, it's a school, and been there, right? I have close relationships with the staff members, and when they've asked for support, the numbers have changed over time. Like there was a year that said the government isn't allowing this, so we don't need this much money. There was something that you could just feel very like I trusted them. Yeah. And then there was another organization that was just sending monthly, and I felt like I was getting more like just ads and these really nice, well printed on stock paper. I'm like, where is my money going? And it's a part where it's like I felt good sending the money, but I also realized I don't think I'm doing much good, and that. So then I kind of had to shift course. So I think that makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
Yeah. I a couple of days ago, my wife got a gift bag from somebody that she had contributed to. And she said exactly the same thing you said.
Yeah.
What's going on here? I don't need a gift bag. I can buy this junk for myself.
Yeah.
And why are they wasting the money I'm sending them to do something like this?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in a truly capitalist country, take Singapore, What do those safety nets look like in a country like that?
Well, it varies. I mean, they have a safety net probably close to the same size as ours, because the size of the safety net is not really a function of capitalism itself. That's a population and a government decision. There's nothing uncapitalist about having a large safety net.
Hmm.
And so I would argue that it's really more of a moral question than an economic question. In other words, are we addressing the idea that are we really helping people? Um, and can we show that we are helping them? In the U.S., we started a war on poverty under Johnson in like 65, and unemployment rate was 8%. It's 8% today. We spent trillions of dollars and haven't moved the needle a notch. So clearly, the war on poverty has been a real failure,
Yeah.
because we lost the war, or maybe fought it to a stalemate, I guess you could say. But and so again, I'm all for a safety net of some sort, but I want to see that number change. If we're going to declare war on poverty, I want to see it beat poverty.
Mhm.
and and now I think, the things we talked about helping people learn how to create value. I think training programs to help people find their bliss and their talents. I think there's lots of things like that we can do that would really move the needle, but that isn't what we're doing. Um, we're just throwing money at the problem, which is another thing the government has a tendency to do. Something is broke, throw money at it and see if it
Yeah.
sticks. And it usually doesn't.
Yeah. I love your book. I love the format, as in the template of a conversation. It's beautiful. If you had to, I mean, your book has messages, and clearly it's about why socialism struggles. But if you had to convey a message to our listeners or to the younger generation that's on its way up, about to build a career, what would your message be?
Well, we basically already touched on it. I mean, the main thing is create value, create value, create value. And to recognize that it's in the mind of the consumer. Like I said, I'm a musician. I've got friends who are musicians, and they don't do that well financially, some of them,
Yeah.
but they're happy with that. There's that line in American Pie. I knew if I had the chance, I could make those people dance and maybe they'd be happy for a while. That's the way a lot of my musician friends look at it. And so they're not making huge amounts of money, but they're happy. And so that's another problem with the idea of trying to manipulate stuff is, who am I to say that they're wrong? I can't say they're wrong. I mean, they're right that they're following their bliss, but they may not make a ton of money doing that. On the other hand, they might find that following their bliss does make them a ton of money.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm betting that those musician friends I have that I'm talking about are just as happy as Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And isn't that what it's really about? I mean,
Yes.
having $1 trillion, all the research shows, doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
That there's
Actually, I've even seen data that, there's kind of an an S curve on that, where it's like we need to be at a certain amount, right, to be able to get by out of the poverty line, being able to meet
Yes.
all of our needs, and then it just plateaus. And then I think there's even it can kind of dip even when it's like there's so much, because then you think there's all of this stress that you're holding. There's so much
That's
more
right.
you're having to like kind of almost guard, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so what I would like to see people do, young people particularly, is find your talents, find your bliss, and use those things to create value in the way that ex- uses your talents in the way that makes you the happiest.
Mm.
And that's really what it's about. You may make a lot of money, you may make enough just to get by, but you're going to be happy.
Yeah.
And you know, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Absolutely. That's what it's about.
Yeah, in fact, I remember we had touched on this before about schools and how right now we don't fail kids, and we feel like, kids have to have a very generalist education. They have to be good at everything, basically. And seeing how some kids will really struggle in a certain area, really thrive in another area, but all that energy gets focused into the part that's hard because it's where we need all the extra accommodations, the extra tutors, whatever it is. And so being able to somehow shift that makes a lot of sense, to let these kids really thrive in what they're good at, the things that they love. Are there examples of places, maybe even around the globe, that have more of that model?
Well, actually, when I was teaching high school, I created a model like that.
Oh,
Oh,
You
that's
can look on
amazing.
the internet, impact.org with two T's, IMPACTT.org. And you might want to look through the history section, but I, uh, I think it lasted like 5 or 6 years, and eventually they had to close it down because they couldn't afford the teachers to not be teaching basic skills.
Mm.
oh,
They had to prep people for standardized tests.
Oh, got it. Yep.
And, but yeah, in that program, our first graduating class had 20 students in a school of 600. And our 20 students had the majority of the awards and scholarships.
Wow.
okay.
Um, and, and it was a whole, one time the kids were being interviewed by a television station. And one of the kids, they said, "How do you like the teachers?" And one of the kids said, "Well, Mr. Cardell and Miss McDonald are like parents, but they're perfect parents."
Oh,
Oh, it's so sweet.
that's
Uh, yeah,
Oh,
I mean, it still kind of makes my eyes water a little bit when I say that. But, um, and yeah, on my Facebook account, most of my friends are former students, and most of them from that program. And in fact, one of the things I was doing today was turning over the reins to my book website, not my article website, to one of my former students who was starting a business as a website designer. And she was a student of mine, 20 years ago.
wow.
that's
And
incredible.
so, yeah, I mean, so yes, it can be done, but
Mhm.
it requires things that, first of all, a lot of teachers might not care about doing. A different student, we could let the students pick their own research areas. And I remember a freshman came to me and said, "I want to do," uh, and I'm blanking on that name too. Anyway, it's the thing where plants kill other plants to survive.
Oh,
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Um,
and
cannibal.
and I said, "Yeah, it's something. So it starts with an A." um, and I said, "Well, I don't know anything about that, but sure, let's do it." And a lot of teachers, I think, would have gone, "I'm not willing to let a student do something that I can't teach them."
hmm.
Uh, I think too many teachers want to be the teachers,
Right.
and
Rather
and
than almost the guide.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I would rather be a helper, a guide, rather than telling people what to do.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Wow. That's beautiful, Doug. And thank you for doing that for kids.
Yeah. That's
no,
amazing.
I
Yeah.
took a shot, you know.
You're an incredible person.
An impactful shot, clearly. Oh, and
Me
impact.
too.
Yeah. um,
No,
oh,
I've,
oh,
um, I love having these conversations with you because you're just so rich. You're like this nutrient rich soil. And anything can grow and flourish in that soil. So yeah, I love our conversations, and yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, amazing.
Yes, for sure.
I love them too.
I also wanted to ask about small businesses in a
Mhm.
capitalist society. Um, and when we have these really large corporations that kind of take the majority of like kind of where people are spending and where the money's going, what happens to small businesses and how are they protected in that type of system?
Mm,
Well, this is really the best time in the world to have a small business. Most people don't see that because they see like their neighborhood stores and stuff closing. And yeah, mom and pop brick and mortar things are probably not long for this work. Um, because the overhead is just too high compared to what Home Depot can do. But online, you now
mm,
have the whole world as your market.
true.
And and for example, on Amazon, they have a whole program to help independent sellers. They'll teach you how to do it. In some cases, they will fund you doing it. They will do all kinds of stuff to help you sell on Amazon. Um, and so, and because of that, there are more small businesses now than there ever have been. It's just a fantastic time. But again, progress requires change, and for many people, change is uncomfortable. But but small businesses have to find a niche. They have to find their place, and the big corporations are doing things that have to be done by big corporations. You can't have a mom and pop store that builds cell phones.
True.
um,
Yeah,
it's just impossible.
absolutely.
It takes thousands of engineers and millions of dollars of investment and stuff that you can't do at a small scale. But there's tons of stuff that can be done at a small scale, and people that are doing those things are thriving. So yeah, if there's somebody out there right now, um, I had a friend that was doing that. He didn't try and do it online, as far as I know, but he was doing it in his hometown, trying to sell jewelry. And he said, "Well, I'm not getting my fair share." And I said, "Well, have you done any research to find out what your customers want?" He said, "No, well, I make pretty jewelry. It's beautiful, and they should buy it." I said, "Well, you got to understand that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and the
Yeah,
consumer gets to be the one that decides what's beautiful, not you." Now, I mean, if you're doing art for art's sake, that's cool. That's what some of my musician friends do. Um, but you can't expect to have hit records if you're doing that,
yeah,
um, because the consumer is the boss, and that is capitalism. I mean, but how can you find something more democratic than that? I mean, every day we all vote with our money, and that creates what happens.
Yeah.
And so, uh, and my dollar is just as good as anybody else's dollar. It isn't the thing where anybody has an advantage over anybody else. And there are lots of niches out there, lots and lots of them. And lots of companies are doing well filling those niches,
Mhm.
small businesses.
yeah.
Because a lot of, like, I like really short shorts.
Your dirty little secret.
Yeah. um, and and I've have had problems in the past, finding them. People want these shorts down to your knees, and I like my legs to be free. Uh,
Uh-huh.
uh, but I have since then found niche suppliers that make shorter shorts, like 3-inch inseams as opposed to 30-inch inseams or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
um,
okay.
and so, yeah, I mean, but what that requires is looking for you find is you have to find your talent and your bliss, and then you have to go look for ways to create value the way the consumer perceives that value.
Mhm.
So you've got to go into it saying, I'm trying to create value for people that want this thing. And So I've got to find out what it is that they want. And certainly you want to do it within your own realm. I'm not suggesting that somebody who loves doing plumbing should go out and try manufacturing 3-inch seam shorts. So you want to find out what your niche is. And by the way, that's another area in which AI is very unlikely to be successful. Is I don't think they're going to replace my plumber.
Mm.
And that was another argument I made with Professor Forrester when I was in the program, is that I think there will be a lot more service industries because as more of the other things get taken over, and as we get more stuff, we're quite likely to need more things to be serviced. And so, and those things are things that won't be replaced by AI or any other construct, because it takes people to come out here and fix my plumbing, as I thought about today.
Yeah.
Yeah. We almost found out the other day, actually.
Almost. Yeah, that's close.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The only thing I would add about capitalism that we haven't really touched on is the world since 1500. We talked about the world from 0 to 1500, or one that, and since 1500, actually since about a little later than that, the per capita GDP worldwide has multiplied by a factor of 18.
Wow.
That means there's 18 times more stuff per person than there was in 1500. And that's because of capitalism. Because it was in the 1500 neighborhood that capitalism came on the scene. In Canada and the US, that number is more like 40 times in the developed economies. So capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than any system ever imagined. In 1960, 1970, about 30% of the world lived in extreme poverty. Now that number is 9%, as more and more countries swing over to capitalism.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is it works. Now, could it work better? Would I like to see less government messing around with it? Sure. I mean, the less messing around, the more successful it's going to be. I mean, to give you an idea, government regulations in the U.S. have imposed enough cost that if you were to take those off, the average person in the U.S. would be making over $200,000 a year more.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Can you explain this a little further? I'm really curious about this.
Well, not long ago, I bought a microwave. And it is annoying because it has this safety lock. We have a lot of power failures here. And every time there's a power failure, it turns the safety lock thing back on, so that you have to push a bunch of buttons to get your food out. The reason that exists is because they were afraid the kids would get burned taking something hot out of the microwave. So they put this thing on there to keep kids from being able to open the microwave.
Got it.
Well, in the first place, my 6-year-old grandson figured it out like that. He had no problem. But we're talking about 50 kids a year getting burned, not killed, burned.
Right.
As opposed to 3,000 that got burned every year because adults spilled hot liquids on them. Now, what's the cost of that? So what had to happen? Every microwave manufacturer in the world that hoped to sell microwaves in the US had to go back and re-engineer their product, try and find a way to put these kinds of safety locks on it. Then they had to redo their assembly lines, rewrite all of their manuals. Well, all of that stuff comes at a huge cost. So microwaves now probably have a 15% cost increase due to the fact that they had to make this change for 50 kids getting burned every year.
Right.
And so, look around at all the burdens we have like that, all the things that have to be fixed because government says you have to fix them. You have to, you're not allowed to have a bucket for a mop unless you have built-in ways to keep kids from falling into that bucket and drowning.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, those are the kinds of problems I can see putting a warning on it. I can see putting something on there that says, parents, do not let your kids fill this bucket with water and play with it because they could hurt themselves. But to try and build a drown-proof bucket for kids is not going to happen. Same thing like with helmet laws and um, the environmental issues, all the safety features in your car. I mean, I'm not saying those are bad things, but I would say that let capitalism take care of it. There
Right.
will be some companies that will do that because they'll say, okay, there are people out there that want a bulletproof car that no matter how fast they're going when they run into a brick wall, they're going to live.
Yeah.
But there's going to be other people out there that go, I don't need that because I'm not going to be driving 160 miles an hour into a brick wall. And so I'll settle for a seatbelt, thanks.
Yeah.
And so
Makes sense.
let capitalism, let the consumer decide.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be our choice. And if they did that, a lot of things would be a whole lot cheaper, a whole lot cheaper.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of that with regulations and thinking of how a lot of companies are moving states or you see, globally moving countries, when the regulations are so high, when the taxes are so high, what is the burden on the people when companies leave their regions?
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to see a lot of that in New York. We're seeing some of it already, and in California. People are leaving many of the blue states, if you want to call them that.
Mm-hmm.
In the U.S., we call the far left or the further left-leaning states blue states, and the further right-leaning states red states. Are leaving the blue states to move to the red states, and that's a good way to tell where things are better and where things are worse. People vote with their feet, and companies vote with their feet, and um, you don't see a lot of Americans flocking to North Korea. I mean,
True.
we're allowed to do that. Unlike the North Koreans that would like to get here,
Yeah.
we're allowed to move to North Korea. I don't know of even one person that's done that.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a pretty good reason. I mean, people want to go where things are best, and right now, the highest place people want to immigrate to is the United States.
Yeah.
So, even though capitalism isn't as successful here as I would like, it's successful enough to attract the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a big difference. Now, to get to your actual point, yeah, New York, the people that end up staying in New York are going to have their taxes go way up because the people that are leaving are the biggest part of their tax base.
Yeah.
The companies
Yeah.
that are leaving are the biggest part of their tax base,
Yeah.
and that's been a long historical thing. I mean, we look at the biggest rock stars. Where does Paul McCartney live? Where does Mick Jagger live? Where does Keith Richards live? Where does Ringo Starr live? They don't live in Britain anymore.
I
Taxes is
just
high there.
yes, I just saw this podcast where they were talking about a billionaire in UK who's moved out because of being taxed heavily. And they said that I think he's moved to Dubai, right?
Mm-hmm. Dubai. Yeah.
So his moving out has cost the UK government so much because he was a heavy taxpayer, and it's
Yeah.
going to, if you average a citizen of UK, they pay about £7,000 per year tax. So it's going to take 450,000 taxpayers to compensate for his leaving. which blows my mind.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, and I think I'm actually opposed to income tax in general. I think you're taxing the wrong thing. Whenever you tax stuff, you're essentially penalizing the activity that you're taxing. So that's why we tax cigarettes, alcohol. So we do that because we're trying to punish it. We're trying to say we're going to make it more expensive for you to do this because we think it's bad for you. Now, I'm not saying I like that kind of a tax either, but it illustrates the point that a tax is a penalty on the activity.
Yeah.
What I would prefer to see is a sales tax. Now, I think Canada has some form of that nationwide. We don't. And I think that makes a lot more sense because now you're saying the thing that we're going to tax is spending, not producing. And why would you want to punish producers? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. The producers are the ones that are doing the producing.
Yeah.
And so why would you want to make it harder for them to do that? Now, I can understand making it so that there's more expense in buying stuff. The rich would still pay their fair share because they'd be spending more. And the mechanism was already in place. The only people who would be hurt would be lawyers and accountants. And because of that, taxes would go down dramatically. It would take far less tax to have a nationwide sales tax than it would to have an income tax because they have to spend tons and tons and tons of our money to police the system because you make a system like that and people are going to try and game it. They're going to try and beat the system. But with a sales tax, there's no way to beat it. You're there, you're buying stuff. The tax is the tax.
Right.
Yeah.
And so all of that lawyering and government worry about how to enforce the law just vanishes.
Wow. Yeah. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I mean, the businesses are also, they're providing the jobs. So they are giving, that's where the money is going, right? Is to the people who are working there. And then, so that makes a lot of sense. And having more money in the pocket is a lot easier to spend more. So, so yeah. Awesome. Anything more?
Nope, I'm out of questions.
Okay. Was there anything
you like to? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just would love for you to be able to wrap up, like any specific message that you want to give to our viewers.
Well, I hope they'll buy my book.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
If they've enjoyed the conversation, I think they'll love the book.
Yeah, for our viewers, the book is called "Why Socialism Struggles." It's available on Amazon, and we'll put a link in the description. Don't miss it.
Great!
It's an awesome book.
Much. Yes, I'm proud of it. I think I did a decent job.
Yes.
And again, it's back to value. That in my ideal world, and the world I would like to see all of us striving for, is a world where everybody gets to do what they want to do the best way they can do it, and use that to help the rest of the world by creating value for everybody else. I mean, I would love to see everybody go out there and become an Elon Musk and do things that make the whole world better for all of us. I don't think you can beat that.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug. That was an inspiring way to end the episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll keep tracking your book success, and we're happy for you.
Yes. Celebrating you very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.